In 1967, a small British team arrived at the Dutch Grand Prix carrying something that looked unfinished. There was no massive factory behind it, no army of engineers in matching uniforms, just Team Lotus, led by an impatient engineer named Colin Chapman, and an entirely new Formula One car whose engine was doing a job no Grand Prix engine had ever officially been asked to do. Across Europe, Ferrari still represented factory power. Maranello built cars the old way, backed by industrial resources and decades of prestige. Enzo Ferrari famously dismissed Britain's independent constructors as garagisti, garage owners assembling racing cars in little workshops rather than proper factories. To many inside the paddock, this latest Lotus looked dangerously ambitious. Some thought it was brilliant, others thought it would break before half-distance. That confidence was about to become the most expensive mistake in Formula One. Within only a few seasons, the engine hidden behind the driver's shoulders would become the most successful Formula One engine in history, powering 155 World Championship victories, humiliating Ferrari on circuits across Europe, and changing the way every Grand Prix car would be built. This is the story of the Lotus 49. Everything started with a rulebook. For the 1966 Formula One season, the FIA doubled the maximum engine capacity from 1.5 litres to 3.0 litres. Overnight, almost every manufacturer found itself starting again. That sounded simple. It wasn't. Designing a competitive 3-litre racing engine normally required years of development and millions in investment. Ferrari already possessed enormous factory resources. BRM built an unbelievably complicated 16-cylinder engine. Maserati had experience. Honda was spending heavily. While the factories threw money at the problem, Team Lotus had something they usually had: very little money. Colin Chapman had already transformed Formula One more than once. He introduced aluminium monocoque chassis, pushed lightweight construction further than almost anyone else, and believed adding power was less important than removing weight. But even Chapman could not build a world-beating engine himself. The previous Lotus 43 relied on BRM's huge H16 engine. It produced respectable power. It was also enormous, heavy, complicated. One mechanic later joked that it seemed to contain double of everything. The weight upset the balance of the car. Repairs were painfully difficult, and reliability was poor. Even Jim Clark, one of the greatest natural racing drivers the sport has ever produced, struggled to fight consistently for championships with it. The warning signs were there. Lotus needed something completely different. What almost nobody knew was that, only a short drive away in England, 2 engineers were quietly designing exactly what Chapman had been waiting for. One was Keith Duckworth, an exceptionally gifted engineer whose obsession with efficiency bordered on stubbornness. The other was Mike Costin, equally talented, equally determined. Together, they ran a tiny engineering company called Cosworth. Compared with Ferrari, it barely looked like competition. In reality, it was about to rewrite Formula One. Keith Duckworth never wanted to build engines that merely survived. He wanted engines that won. When Ford agreed to finance development of an all-new Formula One V8, Duckworth finally received the opportunity he had been waiting for. The project eventually became known as the DFV, double 4-valve, a 3-litre V8 producing around 400 horsepower at roughly 9,000 revolutions per minute, extraordinary figures for its day. Power alone was not the breakthrough. The difference was how the engine would be used. Normally, racing cars carried an engine inside a chassis. Duckworth and Chapman imagined something radically different. Instead of hanging the engine inside the car, they made the engine part of the structure itself. Think about what that meant. The aluminium monocoque stopped behind the driver's seat. The engine bolted directly onto it. Then the gearbox and rear suspension attached directly to the back of the engine. The engine was no longer cargo. It became part of the skeleton. That reduced weight, increased stiffness, simplified construction, and improved handling all at once. Later generations would call it a stressed member engine. Today, it is standard Formula One practice. In 1967, it bordered on revolutionary. Ferrari believed great racing cars came from great factories. What Enzo Ferrari did not know was that the future of Formula One was being assembled by a handful of British engineers willing to ignore tradition. One Lotus mechanic later remembered everyone speaking quietly whenever the new car appeared in the workshop. They knew they were looking at something different. They simply did not know whether it would survive an entire Grand Prix. Neither did Colin Chapman. Failure would be spectacular. Success would change the sport forever. The man trusted to prove the entire concept looked nothing like a superstar. Jim Clark, a softly spoken farmer from the Scottish borders who had grown up working on his family's sheep farm, disliked attention almost as much as he loved driving racing cars. He rarely raised his voice. He rarely celebrated victories. He simply drove faster than almost everyone else. His teammate, Graham Hill, twice a world champion with a completely different personality, carried out much of the early testing because Clark was spending time away from Britain. Hill immediately recognized both the promise and the danger. After one early run, he famously remarked with typical British understatement, "It's got some poke, not a bad old tool." That was one way of describing more than 400 horsepower in a Formula One car weighing little more than half a ton. The first competitive appearance came at Circuit Zandvoort during the 1967 Dutch Grand Prix on the 4th of June 1967. Hill immediately put the new Lotus 49 on pole position. Jim Clark qualified lower after missing much of the development running. The establishment noticed. What they did not know was that qualifying had revealed only part of the story. When the race began, Graham Hill led comfortably before a failure in the engine's camshaft drive ended his afternoon. Many teams watching from the pit wall smiled. Mission accomplished. The revolutionary British engine had broken, exactly as they expected. What happened next changed Formula One forever. Clark carved through the field, set the fastest lap, inherited the lead after Hill's retirement, and drove the Lotus 49 to victory in its very first World Championship race. Ferrari had not been beaten by experience, it had been beaten by an idea, and that idea was only getting started. Winning on debut made headlines. Staying at the front was much harder. The Cosworth DFV had already proved it could beat the best cars in Formula One. What it had not proved was whether it could survive an entire championship. Like many revolutionary machines, the Lotus 49 was brilliantly fast, but painfully fragile. The warning signs appeared almost immediately. At the Belgian Grand Prix at Spa-Francorchamps, the new engine suffered spark plug problems. At the French Grand Prix on the Bugatti circuit at Le Mans, both Lotus cars retired with mechanical failures, handing victory to Jack Brabham. The pace was undeniable. The reliability was not. Ferrari watched carefully. Every retirement reinforced what the establishment already believed. The British had built another fast but delicate racing car. That confidence was about to become another expensive mistake. What Ferrari did not know was that Keith Duckworth treated every mechanical failure like a blueprint rather than a disaster. Every broken component returned to Cosworth's workshop in Northampton, where it was stripped apart, measured, and redesigned. Nothing was accepted as good enough. One Lotus mechanic later remembered that there was no shouting after failures. Chapman wanted answers. Duckworth wanted measurements. Emotion solved nothing. That attitude slowly transformed the DFV. Jim Clark never lost faith. The softly spoken Scottish farmer understood something many spectators did not. The car did not need to become faster, it only needed to keep running. While rival teams celebrated Lotus retirements, Lotus engineers quietly removed one weakness after another. In reality, every failure was making the Lotus 49 stronger. Then Silverstone arrived. At the 1967 British Grand Prix, Jim Clark placed the Lotus 49 on pole position with a lap of 1 minute 25.3 seconds, ahead of Graham Hill and the reigning world champion Jack Brabham. It was another warning to the rest of Formula One. Few were listening. The biggest revolution was almost invisible. Every Formula One designer faced the same problem. A racing chassis had to be incredibly stiff. If it twisted through corners, suspension settings changed, tires lost grip, and the driver lost confidence. The traditional solution was simple: build a stronger chassis. The problem was that stronger usually meant heavier. Chapman hated unnecessary weight. Keith Duckworth hated unnecessary parts. Together, they found an answer nobody else had fully committed to. Instead of surrounding the engine with extra framework, they allowed the Ford-Cosworth DFV to carry the loads itself. The aluminium monocoque ended directly behind the driver's seat. The 2,993cc V8, producing roughly 408 horsepower at 9,000 revolutions per minute, bolted onto the back of that tub. Then the gearbox, rear suspension, and rear wheels attached directly to the engine. There was no heavy space frame supporting everything behind the cockpit. The engine itself became the bridge between the front and rear of the car. Think about what that meant. Removing dozens of structural tubes reduced weight. The chassis became stiffer. The suspension worked more consistently. Mechanics gained easier access during repairs. One engineering decision solved multiple problems simultaneously. It sounded risky because it was. Every bump, every gear change, and every surge of more than 400 horsepower now traveled through the engine block itself. If the casting cracked, the entire rear of the car could effectively come apart. Many engineers considered the idea too dangerous. Chapman considered it unavoidable. What the establishment did not know was that Formula One's future had already changed. Within a few years, nearly every serious constructor adopted the same principle. Ferrari eventually did, McLaren did, Williams did. Even decades later, modern Formula One cars still use the engine as a stressed structural member because the Lotus 49 proved it worked. The little British garage team had not simply built another racing car, it had quietly rewritten the engineering rulebook. Winning a single Grand Prix can happen because everything goes right. Winning again and again is something completely different. After the Lotus 49 stunned Formula One by winning on its debut, Chapman and Duckworth refused to celebrate for long. Every race became another engineering lesson. Suspension geometry changed, cooling improved. Small reliability fixes accumulated one after another. None of them made headlines on their own, but together they transformed the Lotus 49 from a brilliant idea into the benchmark of Formula One. Jim Clark rewarded that work immediately. He won the 1967 British Grand Prix, then added victories in the United States Grand Prix at Watkins Glen and the Mexican Grand Prix. 4 World Championship victories in its debut season proved the Dutch Grand Prix had not been a lucky afternoon. Ferrari's factory resources remained enormous. Their reputation remained intimidating. But reputation does not score championship points. Performance does. The difference was becoming impossible to ignore. While Ferrari continued believing experience would eventually defeat innovation, Lotus kept improving the same fundamental idea. What Ferrari did not know was that the Cosworth DFV was about to become available to other British constructors as well. That single decision would multiply the problem. Instead of fighting one Lotus, Ferrari would soon face an entire generation of cars powered by exactly the same revolutionary engine. The British garage builders were no longer isolated. They were becoming an army. The Lotus 49 reached another level in 1968. Jim Clark opened the Formula One season by winning the South African Grand Prix at Kyalami. It was the 25th World Championship victory of his career, breaking Juan Manuel Fangio's record for the most Formula One wins at the time. Nobody could have known it would also become his final Formula One race. Just over 3 months later, on the 7th of April 1968, Clark travelled to Hockenheim for a Formula 2 event. On the 5th lap, his Lotus left the circuit at high speed after an apparent tyre failure. He struck the trees. He never regained consciousness. He was only 32 years old. The racing world fell silent. Colin Chapman later said he had lost not only his greatest driver, but his closest friend. Graham Hill admitted the thing he missed most was Jim Clark's smile. Mission impossible now faced Team Lotus. The car that had been designed around the quiet Scottish farmer suddenly had to continue without him. Many believed Lotus would collapse. Many believed Ferrari would finally reclaim complete control. They were wrong. Jim Clark was gone. The establishment expected Lotus to disappear with him. Instead, Graham Hill carried the team forward. Hill was almost Clark's opposite. Outgoing where Clark was reserved. Charismatic where Clark was quiet. But inside the cockpit, he possessed extraordinary determination. Driving the evolved Lotus 49B, Hill won the Spanish Grand Prix, then conquered the streets of Monaco, one of the most demanding circuits in the world. By the end of the season, he secured the 1968 Formula One World Drivers' Championship, while Lotus claimed the Constructors' Championship. That achievement mattered far beyond one season. Ferrari had not merely lost another title, they had lost the future. Within only a few years, teams such as McLaren, Tyrrell, Williams, Brabham, Ligier, and others would all adopt the Cosworth DFV. The same engine that Ferrari had dismissed became the engine almost everyone wanted. The garage builders had taken over Formula One, and Ferrari had watched it happen in real time. Keith Duckworth never intended to build an engine for only one team. The DFV was engineered so well that customer teams could buy it, bolt it into their own chassis, and immediately compete against the biggest manufacturers. That completely changed Formula One's economics. Previously, only huge factories could realistically fight for victories. Now, a talented constructor with limited money could purchase the same basic power unit used by Team Lotus. Think about what that meant. Innovation suddenly mattered more than factory size. Driver talent mattered more than corporate prestige. Engineering intelligence mattered more than industrial muscle. The victories kept coming. Lotus won, McLaren won, Matra won, Tyrrell won, Williams won, Brabham won. The total continued climbing until the Cosworth DFV reached an astonishing 155 Formula One World Championship victories, making it the most successful Formula One engine in history for decades. The warning signs had been there. Ferrari simply chose not to believe them. History often remembers the winners. It should also remember the ideas. The Lotus 49 was not simply another fast racing car. It introduced a way of thinking. Its stressed engine design became the blueprint for modern Formula One construction. Its Cosworth DFV engine became the benchmark against which every rival power unit would be measured. Its influence stretched far beyond Team Lotus itself. The records speak for themselves. The DFV powered 155 Formula One Grand Prix victories, multiple World Drivers' Championships and Constructors' Championships across more than a decade of competition. It remained competitive well into the early 1980s, an extraordinary lifespan in a sport where technology usually becomes obsolete within only a few seasons. But statistics tell only half the story. The cost was enormous. Jim Clark never saw the full legacy of the machine he helped create. His victory at Kyalami on New Year's Day 1968 became the final Formula One win of his remarkable career before his fatal accident at Hockenheim only months later. At the time of his death, he held the records for 25 Grand Prix victories, 33 pole positions, and 28 fastest laps. Colin Chapman continued innovating. Formula One continued evolving. Yet the basic philosophy first proven by the Lotus 49 never disappeared. Modern Formula One cars from McLaren, Ferrari, Mercedes, Red Bull Racing, Aston Martin, and Williams all still use the engine as a structural member of the chassis. The details have evolved beyond recognition, but the principle remains exactly the same. That is the true measure of greatness. Not simply winning races, changing how everyone else has to build their racing cars. Ferrari laughed at the British garage builders. They called them garagisti. Then those same garage builders forced the entire sport to follow their blueprint. No Formula One team has ever gone back. The Lotus 49 did not simply defeat Ferrari, it changed Formula One forever. If you enjoyed this story, there are plenty more like it on the channel. Hit subscribe and I will make it worth your time.